Greetings, YouTube, and welcome to a Liberty Bells hangout. We've got all the Liberty Bells here today. There's me, Elizabeth, Natty, Catherine, Paula, and I'm delighted to say that we're joined by Goodfella and Doctor Randomercam. So I've got a couple of things that I would like to say to start the show, and then I'd like to go around and get everyone's kind of opinions on what's been going on, and also any responses to what I'm about to say. So basically, I don't think it's hyperbolic to say that men and boys are second-class citizens in the UK. However, I think the one good thing that we had going on is that for a long time now, our women have been free to pursue whatever roles they wanted to pursue with as much support and validation as they needed. And as of just over a week ago now, with the decision to axe the walk-on girls at darts and the subsequent decision to scrap them from Formula One as well, there are a few women in our country who are just a little bit less free, and that really irks me. And now I know that Paul is going to be kicking me under the table saying, don't interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake, but I've got to mention, you know, that feminists are cheering all of this on, and I kind of love it, actually, because it's like a load of sports fans and models have just been red-pilled, and the word feminism has entered the vocabulary of a whole new demographic, and they don't fucking like it. So that's my piece for now, and I'd like to go around the table. Who'd like to start?
Well, they've done their best to damage control on this. I like a lot of people, have read a lot of, seen a lot of interviews about this sort of thing, and they like to go with, oh, this has nothing to do with feminism. It's just a decision at the top of Formula One and darts and that to not continue this anymore. And then the plot thickens. They find out it's following negotiations with broadcasters. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's nothing to do with the sports people. It's to do with the broadcasting people, such as the BBC. Obviously, the BBC isn't in control of all the darts.
Sky and ITV as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so, and everyone's passing the buck to someone else, saying it wasn't us. And yet, like I said in my recent video, that when you look for someone to speak out in favor of this ban, almost everyone who does is as a card-carrying feminist. That's not a coincidence now, is it?
Absolutely. Who's next? Goodfella?
Well, I think it's a blessing in disguise, to be honest. I mean, I'm against the idea of these women not being allowed to choose their own career path. But I think it's a blessing in disguise because a lot of these women would probably have called themselves feminists, you know, because of the dictionary definition, because they believe in equality. Not like the ones we know, but, you know, like Karen Strawn calls the coffee house feminist. And now they can see feminism exactly for what it is. You know, a bunch of shrill, hideous women who are envious and who don't want men to enjoy anything, you know. And it's just, I mean, it's like at the very same time, there are women in Iran who can't even, you know, they're getting thrown in jail and disappearing because they're protesting a head covering. And I haven't heard one feminist mention this, not one. And yet they're on this grid girls thing. It's just it's very strange. It just shows you how spoiled they are, and it shows you what they're really all about. And hopefully, as I say, a blessing in disguise. A lot of these models and a lot of young girls as well who wanted to do that kind of job can now see feminism for what it is, and I think that's a good thing.
I'm sure in the Islamic world they called it a blessing in disguise when they first got rid of the belly dancers 100 years down the road, and they got the hijab as well.
And replace them with the little boys, with the dancing boys. Sorry.
Yeah, the bunch of budgie, yeah.
That's exactly what Formula One's doing. Have you seen that?
That's right.
Formula One are replacing their grid girls with grid kids.
Are you serious?
Oh my God. You know,
no, that's real. That's real.
Honestly, after the Hollywood scandal, after the kind of, we know that there's a pedophile ring in Hollywood, what it's boggling, you know. Yeah,
Because they did say, a couple of people did say, well, since we're in a climate of calling men out on their sexual harassment in the wake of the Me Too thing, we really should be sacking all these grid girls and replacing them with children.
Well, they're not. They're only calling out men who've been sexist, not against women, not men who've been sexist against other men, or men who've been sexist against boys, or the women who facilitated all of these kind of girls for all these producers. And it's a complete myopic, just logical, blind fucking alley. It's just nuts.
Yep.
Natty, you want to come in?
Hello. I did that debate on BBC Free Home Counties about the grid girls last week. And the feminist that I spoke to, I cannot remember her name. She just kept going on about sexual gratification and objectification. And the points were made that, you know, these women made the choice to look sexy and to make a living being presentable in that kind of way. And she just kept expressing the same thing over and over about how that's not equality and how all she wants is equality. And it was kind of like a mind block where you asked her to elaborate, you kind of try to push her into stating exactly how that makes these women unequal, and she just kind of, it's like when a robot gets stuck and it can't, you know, continue doing its job. She just kept repeating the same thing over and over. So like what Goodfella said, I'm secretly quite happy that this has kind of happened, because it just shows that they don't have any real arguments in this arena whatsoever at all. Because she couldn't elaborate.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's two things I've found, because I've been on the radio a couple of times talking about this as well. Once with a feminist, twice with a feminist, different ones. And the words that keep coming up are objectification and outdated.
Outdated,
and,
I noticed that.
My response to that is like, oh, really? So we stopped being a sexually reproducing species who likes looking at each other? When the fuck did that happen? Because I missed the memo.
They say that,
and it's like, it's going back to fucking neo-Victorian Puritanism with all this fucking Me Too shit.
That's a buzzword that they use all the time. Outdated. Whenever they don't like something, they just say it's outdated. It's a current year. It's another way of saying the current year. You know, as if you're living in the past. You know, but when are we going to get to the point where catwalks are no longer a thing and we just use mannequins? Because that's outdated, right? Women walking up and down, you know, with the clothes on. Well, why do we need women? Just use mannequins. Therefore, you know, we're going to get to that point. Eventually, we're going to get to that point.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, I think that the thing is that mannequins couldn't perform the job that walk-on girls and grid girls and ring girls as well, because ring girls are under the spotlight in boxing, and that they perform because, you know, as Randomercam points out in your video about this, which is Get Off the Grid Girls. I've included it in the link to the description under the screen.
They have personalities.
They have personalities, yeah. And it's about them being approachable and happy and, you know, seeming to have a good time. That's what gets everyone enjoying themselves.
Now, a lot of these grid girls as well were being asked for autographs when the drivers were. You know, when the young boys and were going up to these drivers to get their autographs, they also wanted the grid girls' autograph. You know, so it's not like they're just, you know, they're not.
I've just watched Randomercam's video, and I saw the woman saying, you know, what kind of a message does this state when a woman's standing there amongst all these men? And I was looking at the kind of the footage, and I was thinking, well, the message that sends is that beauty is worshipped, that these are goddesses.
Power.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong, as you said in your interview the other day. Beauty itself is a virtue, it's not that they're being objectified by men. They're being objectified by feminists. They're being objectified as non-human, without personality, as just being the sum of their sexual parts, which is exactly what they're accusing men of doing. But actually, they're the ones doing it. Yes.
Well, the other thing I was thinking as well was actually when I did my wonderful degree in media and cultural studies and journalism, and we did male gaze theory and objectification of women. That was the straw that broke the camel's back for me when it came to looking at feminism and realizing how bullshit it was.
Is that Judith Christina? She's the one who wrote the seminal feminist essay.
Yes.
On female certificate, yeah.
and male gaze theory, especially. I remember doing that in advertising and film studies. And the whole time my brain was saying, I have female friends, my female friends, they enjoy dressing up in a sexy way and attracting men's attention. And they do it with each other. They compete with each other and they compete to get male attention, and they always want to look good. And this does not come from any pressure from men saying you have to do this or else. It comes from other females. Most men, I think, would be happy if they saw an attractive female wearing a potato sack, as long as she was kind of attractive, symmetrically attractive, right?
They look remarkably hot in that racing gear. You see Rebecca Jackson in my video.
Oh,
Something about that racing gear looks fucking hot.
Yeah.
I don't know why, because it covers every part of your skin, but it's still hot. It's weird.
Totally.
And that's because
I collect beautiful women, right? I've got like phone books full of just images of beautiful women, and like I cut them out of magazines and newspapers and stick them into my notebooks, and I've got a whole like collection of women
Can I
in
borrow
leather racing gear.
See, when I was younger, my mum used to buy all those like women's magazines, like Women's Own and all that crap, right? And one of the themes that was always in these magazines was how to get his attention, how to turn his head, and all that kind of stuff. So now we have to deny that women like to get men's attention. It's not. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to lie to myself and go, no, women don't like male attention. Of course they do. Just like men like female attention.
Yeah,
what you described as a form of pickup artistry, ironically.
Yeah.
Women have been doing it for years, and it was never considered,
Lecturous.
Exactly.
I think we should try and keep in mind as well that even though the majority of the media and the majority of probably 93% of them are going to be feminist, only 7% of feminists kind of exist in the mainstream demographic, and that's the kind of mismatch that we see. They don't particularly they like feeding this kind of thing, but like you say, it's kind of just like the women's magazines. It's just entertainment. It's when they're trying to get into Parliament. It's when they're trying to to kind of sneak in and kind of with their around some so-called kind of charities and things like that. That people like us need to be really just on the ball and knowing that they're doing it, trying to get in schools, feminism in schools and things like that. They can fanny about for as much as they want. Twitter's not the real world, but if they're trying to get in your school to kind of fuck up your daughter and fuck up your son, then that's the thing that we need to concentrate on. So that's what I mean about them. It's good that they're doing. It's good that they're doing this because they're shooting themselves in the foot and the head.
I don't understand why there's this call to get more women in politics, because this is coming from the Grid Girls thing as well, by the way, where they're saying these women could be politicians. Right. But I don't understand why they want to get more women into the government when the entire government works for women. These women just complain. Like look at what Sadiq Khan done with the the transport system. He removed all images of women who were not covered up. Now, that was because feminists wanted this. And they just got it. And they don't have a majority in government, but they still got it anyway, because the government works for women.
Women don't want that, because then why would they buy Vogue, they buy Cosmo, they buy all these women's magazines?
No, feminists want it, sorry.
That are full of naked women.
Yeah.
I
mean, on the women versus feminists thing, you know, if you look at the petition to get the Walk On Girls reinstated, there's loads of female names on there. If you go onto Twitter and listen to the radio, there's loads of women saying that it was something that I enjoyed at the darts. I like.
They're not interested
looking
in
at these
voices
women
unless they're playing the same drum. Basically, that's it. They don't want they don't want strong, independent women. They want clones. They want ants.
What Elizabeth is saying about the appreciation of women's beauty, I am also. I'm not as detailed and hobbyist in my collection of women in scrapbooks and stuff, right? But when I go out with my husband and we see a beautiful woman, I go, "Oh, look at her," and he goes, "Oh yeah, she's whatever out of 10. Yeah, I definitely bang that." And then I go, "If I was a man, I would too." And this is a bonding activity that we do together.
That's another one of my hobbies, actually, grading women out of 10, because I just know it triggers the hell out of feminists. They hate
I love
that.
doing it. We do it to men as well, but I do it more to women, I have to admit. And I don't know. I can't imagine guys walking together with other guys doing that in the same kind of way. You know, it just doesn't happen. But I've seen it.
What with guys?
For a million years now. Yeah. Do you and your mates walk around going, "Yeah, that guy's probably a 10"?
No. Well, I'm not a good I'm not a good example. I'm sure there are guys who do it with women, but they don't do it with guys. No, I'm sure gay guys do, but not straight guys.
Yeah.
So this appreciation of beauty thing is definitely. I mean, obviously, men love looking at beautiful women. We all know that. But
Absolutely.
what I mean is,
and women know
appreciate beauty in a very
when they see one, and they know, and they'll be able to target her as a threat if they're anxious about themselves, if that's their only kind of way that they think about themselves, if they don't think they've got anything else going for them. That's going to be a direct kind of threat kind of situation there. Like, she's going to take the eyes away from me. So either she's going to remove herself from the situation, or she's going to, you know, like the kind of the arms race that's going on at the minute with teenagers and their makeup. I don't know if it's happening in London, but in Newcastle, it's ridiculous. It's like a Kim Kardashian kind of face sculpting kind of thing, where on Kim Kardashian, obviously she's got professional makeup artists, but up here, God, they look like Skeletor with they're just got kind of black kind of lines and then highlighter and it's like what they're obviously they're not attractive to anybody else but themselves, and it's just they're ramping up this kind of arms race of just, well, look, my cheeks are bigger than yours, and it's just really for the clicks, for the looks, rather than actually for being, you know, getting anything else or relationships or just like that. It's literally just for the kind of just for the attention. It's weird.
It's all about competition between women, and certainly as someone who has been a teenage girl, I think a lot of it is completely about impressing all the other girls, and I'm sure Paula knows more about this than I do, that intersexual competition of, you know, trying to find that hierarchy between the group of girls. Mm-hmm. And I wonder whether there's something to do with that in this whole, the way that feminists go after women who are sexualized in situations that they don't like, but when it's on their own terms, it's fine. So for example, if Beyonce is dancing around with very little clothes on, with lots of backing dancers also, you know, jiggling around with not a lot on, that's not objectification, that's empowerment, because it is
audience. All on it's not about being on their own terms, it's about the audience. You know, the girls at sporting events are mainly, they do have female fans, but they're mainly there for men to look at, and Beyonce is mainly there for women to look at. I think that kind of says it all, really, because
it's
you know,
nothing to do with how much. It's nothing to do with how much money is being made by men, because men
No.
make a hell of a lot of money off of Beyonce and all that
No, well,
shit.
there is a hypothesis, and I've muted this before. I run a forum called Darwinian Gender Studies, and I've got it's been up for about 11 years now, and I spent about 4 years there by myself. But now it's kind of, and now it's got about, I keep it really small because I just want to keep it really focused. And we talk about kind of what's Darwinian gender studies. It should be called Darwinian sex and gender studies, because it's not, gender is not a biological, but it's just pithy anyway. But we talk about kind of, I mooted the idea of feminism itself being a mechanism of female intersexual competition, and a guy called Roy Baumeister in 2001 wrote a kind of I'll say it again, seminal essay with a woman called Jean Twenge, I think that's how you pronounce it, and it's called The Cultural Suppression of Female Sexuality. And he did a massive meta-analysis of papers from all everywhere, and the upshot of that was that actually it wasn't patriarchy that suppressed women's sexuality. Even in the Middle East, it was women, it was other women. If you're going to look up that paper, just Google, you can download it for free. It's called The Cultural Suppression.
Mother-in-laws, Paula. Their mother-in-laws.
Oh, yeah. Mother-in-laws. Well, even your own mother as well. They're always running interference about kind of.
I think you found an area where you would agree with Steve Moxon, Paula, because he's written about sex differences explained. It's women who enforce FGM, and it's women who, in China enforced feet binding.
Well,
all these kind of moral and cultural sort of norms are enforced by women.
Men didn't lie on their backs and go, all right, then just do it. There was a kind of cultural benefit to a family kind of lineage, and it depends on how the lineage kind of went up the hierarchy, whether that culture favored boys or whether it favored girls. There are cultures that favor girls and there are cultures that favor boys. So it's not just that one sex is doing something bad and the other, it's kind of, yes, it's pushed by one, and it's tolerated and allowed by another. But going between China and then going between Afghanistan, you'll find that the kind of ecological reasons why that's happening are going to be different. But fundamentally, ultimately, they're happening because of fitness reasons. So yeah, just go and look. Mm-hmm.
Can I take this hypothesis for a second and apply it to what Goodfella was talking about earlier? Because I was telling you guys just before about Theresa May's speech that she did today, where she was talking about the 100-year anniversary of women and working class men gaining the vote. So she said, women in the 19th century had to contend with abuse and open hostility and abuse to gain the right to vote. In the 21st century, it cannot be acceptable for any woman or any person to face threats because she or he has dared to share a political opinion. And then she goes on to describe her plans for increasing powers to prosecute people who intimidate those who want to go into politics online with abuse, etc. And she says that we need more women in politics. And one of the reasons why we don't have enough women in politics is because women are intimidated and fearful of the abuse they're going to get online. So this is her reasoning why she wants to reduce our free speech and become more fascist in this kind of way. As we know, she keeps doing this again. But what I'm going to link it to with the hypothesis you were just talking about, female intersexual competition, is Goodfella asks, why on earth do we need more women in politics? Or why are people like Sophie Walker obsessed with having 50-50 representation in government, etc.? Or maybe, Goodfella, if all these women are trying to become boring politicians, fighting over minuscule power because, the EU makes most of our laws, etc., they are in the House of Parliament fighting with each other, making a mockery of themselves, and they're not chasing after other women's high status men. They're trying to be politicians and they're kind of out of the way. So, you know, it could work with that hypothesis if you think about it. I mean,
you see,
like,
I differ
politics
with you
is
here
really
because
a busy lifestyle, I guess.
I don't trust feminists and women like Theresa May when they come out and say that women are not going into politics because they're going to face all this abuse, because they fucking know fully well that it's Tory men who are likely to face the most abuse. I feel like, you know, they probably believe that they're saying it from a good place, but actually there's like some kind of territorial thing going on where they don't want more women encroaching on their patch.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's definitely female intersexual competition. If they wanted more women in politics, they would support us entering politics.
So what does it?
What do that?
What does intimidation translate to? When Theresa May says she wants to stop women being intimidated, what are they going to count that as? If I say to a politician on Twitter, I disagree with your policy, is that going to count as intimidation? You know what I'm saying? If I say, oh my God,
depends
she's
who
such
it
a
is,
bitch,
which politician.
that's an intimidation.
People on Twitter. No, they shouldn't. If they're supposed to be representatives of a demographic, they still represent. Look at the abuse that Nigel Farage gets. I mean, this guy gets dogs abuse, you know, and I've never heard him complain about it. I've never heard him say, "Oh, this is too much. I can't do my job. This is terrible." He just gets on with it. He just laughs at it. And why can't women do that? Aren't they just as strong as men? I know. That's what I'm saying. I know they can, but feminists seem to think that they can't. You know, it's bizarre.
Maybe, maybe she's secretly friends with Diane Abbott, and this whole thing is just to make sure that Diane Abbott doesn't have a mental breakdown because she gets too much abuse. Apparently, she gets the most abuse out of anyone. Sorry.
I think this is the Tories trying to get voters from Labour, because they know that Labour is up and down with this sexual politics business, and they've probably looked into it with market research and realised most of the country, even a lot of Tories, are also on board with this idea that women are victimised all over the world. So they're not just trying to win voters from Labour; they're trying to say, "Hey, we're the status quo. Don't leave our party because you think we're misogynists. We're not. We totally believe in all the good and true things that Labour believes as well."
Yes,
this is why I don't trust either party, and why I'm still not going to vote for either party until either of them displays any evidence that they know what the fuck they're talking about, and they're not just chasing the fucking threat narrative of the poor women.
How much to this flattery towards women who aren't feminists, but who kind of like it? You know, that it's kind of, oh, women are delicate, women need to be cared for. It's the benevolent sexism that 10 years ago the feminists were railing against. And you know, women are just humans. You know, you as a class, you kind of say to them, "You're special. You need special kind of privileges and all this kind of thing." They'd be really, you know, anyone of average intelligence would just go, "All right then, I'll have that." Anyone would. That's, you know, men did in the, you know, the 50s or the 60s, when it's like, all right then, yeah, I'll have that. I'll have a secretary. Ooh. You know, and it's not any kind of evidence of malevolence within either sex. It's just an example of just the weakness of human nature. You know, if you're gonna, you can flatter somebody into just giving you, you know, selling you their soul, really, which is what socialism does. But that's another thing.
I don't want anybody representing me who can't take a bit of online abuse, male or female. You know, if you can't take a bit of online abuse, I don't want you representing me or my country or anything like that. Go away. You're not.
Yeah.
If it's your job to deal with words and ideas, like if it's your job to one day maybe have to deal with Putin, and you can't deal with some cunt on Twitter, then no, you're not qualified.
Just because I know Diane Abbott's just been mentioned, she wrote something in the Times today, so I've just looked it up. And also thinking about alternative facts, I know there has been research that suggests that men get more abuse. Then writing in the Times today, Diane Abbott says, women in politics get far more online abuse than their male counterparts.
Wrong.
And she also says, I hold the sad distinction that fully half of all the abuse, all the online abuse sent to women MPs in all parties in the run-up to the last election was sent to me.
I can shed some light on this. What she is referring to is an Amnesty International study which came out with like the headline that she got the most abuse. And that study,
I analysed that.
Yeah, it only looked at women, despite the headline suggesting that, you know, being a woman was a kind of predictor of how much abuse you would get. And for some reason, it seems to have not looked at Theresa May, because I know that she gets more. She gets the most abuse out of any politician.
Even more than that.
Yeah, conservative women don't count.
I'm pretty sure Trump gets more, but I know you.
Oh yeah.
I think
Of British politicians.
I think one of the issues is that women will say things are abuse that men wouldn't say was abuse. You know, if somebody calls me a twat online, I wouldn't say that was abuse. I don't care, but a woman would say, "Oh, that's me being abused." I think that's a big difference. That's why people think women are abused more, because they complain more. Men don't complain as much.
I think they try and work this out.
Before we move on about that, Amnesty International study, because it wasn't a study. It didn't call itself a study. It was some, I can't remember what it was. But in about the third paragraph, it basically admitted that its methods would just didn't give any kind of data that was worth putting out there, and that more work needed to be done. It was about 4 pages.
But we're going to put it out there anyway. And
they put it out there. I tweeted loads about it because it came out, and I looked at it and I just thought, fuck me, that's a pile of you're even admitting yourself that it's a pile of shit. And then what's her name? Diane Abbott was on Breakfast News saying the N-word to shock people into believing her. But honestly, it wasn't. You can get it online. It says within the first few paragraphs that it's shit, that it didn't do what it was supposed to do, and they need to do it again.
Well, I don't want to victim blame, but Diane Abbott asks for it. She's an idiot. She says some insane things. She asks for abuse online. She begs for it. You know, some of the shit she comes. She's fucking racist as well, by the way.
Oh yeah, hell shit.
Yeah, my mum loves her, so that means she must be a racist.
But do you remember I tried to say it to Mary Beard recently about a few weeks ago? I said, you know, Mary, people don't abuse you on Twitter because you're a woman. They abuse you on Twitter because you're a feminist. And what followed was about a week long of Mary's
followers.
Desperately trying to abuse me on Twitter. And it was a really hilarious few days. And because Mary's kind of calling card is, you know, women are silenced on social media. And all I said to her was, Mary, people don't disagree with you and because of, you know, what you know, because you're a woman, just because you talk shite. And
which is exactly what Anne Widdecombe said to that politician.
Her followers was hilarious. It was really good.
And it's QED. What Hequal found out when he analysed the tweets going on between Jordan Peterson and Cathy Newman fans, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Can I just bring up Philip Davies for a second? Because as you know, we are ladies Philip Davies.
Or alter ego.
Exactly.
We put on our mask.
I'm Philip Davies likes to retweet all of the tweets that are about him. It doesn't matter whether they are good or bad. And also, what's very interesting about Philip is when the whole Me Too Parliament thing started, like last month, I sent him a message saying, I'm a bit worried about you, Philip. They all hate you so much. What, you know, someone's going to try and stitch you up. What can we do? And he responded saying, don't worry. I am not going to be involved in this particular scandal at all. I'll be fine. And I'm thinking he's just saying that because he's Philip and he's got, you know, he's a strong man and he's got to, like,
Well,
he's got to, you know. But I got the impression that Philip, what's the word, has probably never, ever really said anything that could be deemed even slightly outrageous. And the reason I think this is because when we were at the election hustings, there was this Lib Dem lady there giving a whole load of shite on the table with us. And she wrote this blog where she published all these emails that she had back and forth with him. And she said, when I talk to you in person, Philip, you are so honest, straightforward. In fact, I would even go as far as to say that you are a gentleman. But in the emails that you send me, they are just really brash and rude, etc., etc. And I've seen these emails, and they just don't have a lot of kind of, you know, feminine appeasement language. It's just very straightforward. But when he does talk to you in person, he is extremely charming in a kind of straight up kind of way. And
hang on a minute though, because I remember you telling me about this woman, and isn't she the woman who, when she was challenged to say what it was that had offended her in the emails, it was because he called her a socialist?
Yeah, and that was the only thing. That was a bit of banter. But my
calling someone a socialist is like abuse. You know what I mean? Is that going to be the line?
She would probably claim that is kind of like being abused, but she had nothing when she spoke to him in person. She's spoken to him in person numerous times. And
about Philip.
Yeah, go on. Sorry.
It's, you know, Philip's. He says his grandma was a suffragette, doesn't he? Was it his grandma or his great grandma?
Yeah.
I think he's a secret feminist. I think he is.
An equity feminist, maybe.
Yeah, I think he's not ready to disavow the word at all.
No.
No, I disagree. I mean, I listened to him, and you know, he says he refers to feminist zealots.
Yes.
And I think that when he does that, it's partly to, you know, it's a verb to describe their behavior, but I think it's also a kind of obfuscation of whether he's referring to all feminists or just radical feminists. And I think he's referring to all feminists.
That might be a clever obfuscation. You know, it might be what Martin Daubney does, you know, when he gets his kind of place in the telly. And
Either way, you don't often hear feminists blaming feminists for anything. Either separating good feminists from bad feminists or just saying feminists. If someone is a feminist, you won't hear them say anything bad about feminists, let alone calling them zealots.
Well, that's not true.
You know,
intersectional feminists hate. Absolutely.
I suppose Base Mom does it all the time, but not in sound bites like Phil does.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know why Christina calls herself a feminist, because in action and in rationality and everything else, she's not a feminist. She's an egalitarian, and so is Kathy Young. We went and had a drink about a month ago in London when I was down there. I don't understand what attachment they have to the word that has just.
I think that's quite clever in some ways as well, though, because it kind of illustrates that there is no consensus within their own movement. And in a way, it kind of invalidates a lot of what the stupider feminists say, when you can say to them, well, look, how you don't get to say feminism this, feminism that, feminism the other. You can't agree between yourselves. So don't start telling me what I have to do and that I have to accept your label when you can't even agree between themselves. And I think there is that quote of, is it Camille Paglia or Christina Hoff Sommers? One of them, their quote is, well, yeah, the only thing that annoys them more than me not calling myself a feminist is me calling myself a feminist. So I think there's a lot of clever reasons, and also you can't attack them in that it takes away that line of attack of just calling someone anti-feminist, because that is now an attack. Like that, I was on the blocking block for anti-feminist. That was the reason.
Yeah. It might give them a kind of a foot into the kind of media kind of place that they need to be in, they need to maintain, because the mainstream media is absolutely just a feminist organization. But then I'm not really sure about basically the one premise that you need to ask a feminist is, do you believe in patriarchy? And if they say yes or no, then you'll know that they're pretending to be a feminist, or they are an actual feminist, because the patriarchy thing is the thing that kind of
this grid girls business has proven one thing, and that's that anti-feminists are more feminist than feminists are. Does that make sense?
Well, they're egalitarians.
You know what I mean? I'm more of a feminist than anyone else who calls himself a feminist, because I actually believe a woman should have the right to choose to do whatever job she wants, whereas they don't.
That's always just been egalitarianism and Enlightenment values. Feminism jumped on the coattails of them and called it their own movement. It wasn't. They just kind of got hold of it and kind of went in, you know. And again, they jumped on the coattails of the civil rights movements in America. This is what intersectionalism is, I think. They're realizing that feminism, you know, women aren't a kind of oppressed class at all. So they're kind of leeching themselves on to actual oppressed peoples, you know, like minorities and disabled people, and just leeching their kind of their legitimate place, you know, to say, you know, we are could we possibly be a protected class because we have genuine, you know, difficulties in reaching the same things that our able-bodied, neurotypical kind of peers do. Feminists are trying to leech that from them, and I think that's something that intersectional, certainly Black feminists, understand, but they're still all in the same kind of patriarchal, postmodernist, fucked up boat that's sinking.
I think that there is a lot of hate in between these kind of different so-called oppressed groups, and there's a lot of that leeching, you know, the BLM people will hijack the march. Or I don't know if anyone's seen that footage of what's her name, Rose McGowan, and she's giving a talk at like a book signing or something, and a trans woman starts heckling her, and she just loses it. But it's this thing that, in a way, sometimes I think the only people they treat worse than they treat us is each other, from the way that they go at each other. It can be really vicious.
And that just shows that they do not understand. They have some kind of really kind of fairy tale idea about what femininity is, even though they don't know how to define femininity. They think a man who puts on a dress can be a woman. They don't have any idea, and they have no idea about female intersexual competition, as you brought up before, and how intense and absolutely fucking down the line, on the line, and fuck you it is, you know. And we see that it's kind of, I think I've said before, and I think I said it on Twitter or something like that. I said, you know, people who are ignorant of their biology are the ones most enslaved by it. And at the minute, social justice warriors, feminists, intersexual feminists especially, are absolutely enslaved to their biology, because they don't know why their anger is manifesting. They don't know that it's manifesting because life is shit, and because you've got hormones that are coming out at a certain age, and because you want certain things, and because you're not really conscious of, you know, what you're trying to achieve in life. You think you're going to be able to get that by getting this fantastic job in Jezebel and getting paid, you know, £5 an hour. It's not going to do it for you. And once they leave university or leave these little enclaves, real life is just, it is oppressive. It's absolutely oppressive, because they're not ready for it at all.
Have you seen that video of that group of women? Oh, they're called the what are they called? They get together and they wrestle each other, and they say that they're angry with Theresa May, and they want to kill the Tories. And the end of this video is them screaming, "Theresa May, I hope you die."
Oh, Feminist Fight Club. Someone did a video about this. I forgot who it was.
I'm making a video. I'm making a YouTube video that's taken me like a month about witch hunts, and it's going to be about how I'm I'm just going to be looking at the actual history of the Salem witch trials and drawing some parallels between some of what's going on today. And actually, a lot of it was these young people who had all this rage and didn't have ways to express themselves, basically behaving exactly how those feminist Fight Club women were behaving. And I think my argument, I think, is going to be that today, particularly young girls, are brought up to think you can achieve anything, you can do anything. And there's this whole internet out there where you can be so successful and make a career. And I think maybe there's almost too much. There's too much choice. There's too much to do. And maybe that's why, because if you compare it to these women from 400 years ago, they had no opportunities and they were going to die in 2 minutes. And I wonder whether there may be something in that it's just terrifying that there are no limits. And it's great actually to be able to say someone's limiting me. That's the reason I haven't got.
It's a bit like it's what I used to call the Sky dilemma. Like back in the 90s, I thought I don't want Sky because it's got hundreds of channels. And whenever I find myself flicking through it, I think I can't decide on a thing. There's hundreds of different things. I'd rather just flick through everything forever looking for something to watch than actually watch something. And it's kind of easier to watch TV if you're restricted to like 4 or 5 channels. But at the same time, that's no reason to restrict the channels, if you see what I mean, because that's
This will be the last thing I say, because I feel like I've been dominating too much. But it's like you're flicking through the intersectional catalogue. That you know, what's the oppression that I feel at the minute. And I think generally what all ideologies are really good at is harnessing teenage angst or fear. And it's usually teenage angst as well from men, you know, because they're the kind of the more reckless ones, the one that are and they generally, I think it's something that Jordan Peterson might kind of bring up, but this is something that I've been saying as well for a while. You know, it's not that feminists want to get into schools because they want access to that teenage angst, to that kind of resource of just kind of that miasma of just angst that you can apply any kind of ideology to and say, you know what, this is what's causing that angst. And nothing's causing it. The only thing that's causing it is that you're a teenager. And that's why I want to keep feminists out of school, and all ideologies do this to men and women. And I think feminists, and I don't even know if they're aware that they're doing it, but certainly that kind of thing's worked in the past. Obviously, getting to kids, it works in the past. Getting to young teenagers, it works. Getting them to kind of indoctrinate themselves. But I think that's the main danger of feminism. They could spend all day on Twitter as much as they want. We need to keep them away from, you know, young plastic minds and stop them. And I feel this way about ideologies that target men as well, not just feminism. That kind of target that kind of little miasma of kind of anxiety and say, do you know what's causing that? It's them. Let's go get them. And I think that's what worries me about ideologies completely.
Thank fuck we don't live in Canada, eh?
But I'm going to shut up now.
So just back to the witch trials thing. Sorry to keep talking about this, but they the idea was in that Puritan society, they believed that everything around them was either from God or from the devil, and they believed that. So every good thing was holy and every bad thing was devilish. And I think today maybe the way that feminism the modern feminist movement, I think one of their great coups that they have achieved is getting everyone to believe that the whole world goes around on this basis of patriarchy, misogyny, sexism, and the way that this new vocabulary that we have to describe a man touching a woman's bum, that's misogyny, that's sexism, that's not someone you know, behaving badly sexually. You know, when Kevin Spacey was abusing young boys, is that sexism, or is that just, you know, disgusting, lewd, abusive, sexually abusive?
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, you bring me on to like gender-based violence. That term just drives me fucking nuts. Because,
but they I think it's this 1984 George Orwell thing of, if you can control language, you can control the way that people think. And, you know, every time in the newspaper, something bad happening to a woman isn't just something bad happening to a woman, it's misogyny. And I think it's this idea that, you know, obviously bad things happen to women, and women get, you know, sexual assaults happen, but this shift in the mind that it's caused by patriarchy, it's caused by misogyny, it's caused by hatred of women. That to me is something they have achieved, because it means that we can only think in those terms. And therefore, as you were saying, like going into schools, saying all this teenage angst for all these bad things that happen to you, and bad things will happen to you, that it gives you an explanation for that. You can blame it on the devil, you can blame it on the patriarchy, and it gives you something to fight against. So it's very, very clever.
You might say we need individualism to curb women's natural biological inclination to collectivism, and we need a little bit of collectivism to curb men's sort of instinctive biological nature to be individuals. There's a lot of talk, you know, in pretty much all areas of our sphere at this point about the balance between collectivism and individualism. And there's people everywhere on this spectrum. Some people say, no, we don't need collectivism at all. That's just socialism, bitch, get rid of it. And there's some people saying, no, we can't survive as individuals at all. That's daft. And, you know, both of those extremes are wrong. The answer is somewhere in the middle, but it's difficult to tell where it is in the middle. But at this point, we're getting a little bit too collectivist, as you can tell from all of the things we've been talking about today. And I think it's because we've been curbing whatever masculine sort of, I believe Jung would call it the anima. No, the animus? No, yeah, the animus. There's too much animus, not enough anima. It's like we're because often I think it was Karen Strong that said that feminism is female nature sort of unchecked. It's like complete taking female nature and letting it loose on the world, and without giving it any checks or balances at all. And that includes collectivism. I think this is probably controversial what I'm saying at this point, but I think women are more biologically collectivist and men are more biologically individualist. Because men hunt and women domesticate, you know.
Well,
no, I agree. I agree with that last point.
Certainly domestic. I don't know. You know, women are kind of evolved to be mothers. I don't know if they're evolved to be housewives, but I think you're right in the collectivist kind of perspective. I think when you look at in nature for kind of for similar kind of setups, you know, we have ants. And ants have a system where you know, there are queens and there are clones, and I think certainly what feminism seems to be trying to kind of build up, and I think I literally think, hopefully without being hyperbolic, a lot of young women are just cannon fodder for them. They're because what they want are just worker ants. They don't want them to reproduce and they tell them not to reproduce, certainly. And by the time, you know, what's as a writer called Ariel Levy found out, by the time, you know, she's 35, freezing your eggs doesn't work. You end up childless, alone for the rest of your life, and that's the consequence of you following this feminist ideology. Right? You need to be really, really careful, because anybody can. Only the most extraordinary people can leave legacies that aren't biological. Most of us, everybody living today, is the consequence of a biological. Our ancestors leaving a biological legacy. You know, Steven Pinker can say, my genes can go jump in the lake, because he is a genuinely extraordinary person and intellectual, and he's left books and a massive kind of legacy. I mean, as Jordan Peterson says, most people work, they don't have careers. If you want to put your career off if you want to put your childbearing off until you're 35, you are taking a massive risk, because you're going to live until you're, you know, 80 years old. That, and you know, by the time you have menopause, that's not half your life gone. You need to seriously think about the messages that feminism is giving women. If women don't have those instincts, absolutely all power to them. But you know, if you do that first, you know, have your kids in your early 20s, in your mid 20s. geez, I'm 48, you know, and it's kind of, this is the best time of my fucking life. My child's 13 now, and I don't have to be with him all the time. I'm studying, I'm doing all kinds of things. I'm homeschooling as well, but that's something else. But you're not losing out, you're just not being a man. So what? Get a different fucking target. That isn't what feminists say is good, because feminists don't like women, full stop. Stop listening to them.
No, they don't. You're like what we were saying earlier. Feminists don't want other women to have children because it's part of female intersexual competition like this. I think it's a worthy hypothesis, really. I was just thinking about Randomercam's point about
to spread the message.
Well, I was just thinking about Randomercam's point about women being naturally collectivist, and I completely agree, which is one of the reasons why in Women Against Feminism, we are taking our plan a bit into the real world now and making an official organization, right? And we've actually purchased some rights to it this week. Now, one of the criticisms that I get is that this is kind of like becoming feminism again. Well, yeah, kind of, because women like gathering together in a community type setting, and they like sharing together, and they like, you know, if they're going to do anything political, then they probably do like acting in a collectivist way. And the ones that don't, I'm being interrupted by my child, by the way. Hi, what are you doing here?
That is that it's not feminism if it's not theory building, it's not bullshit theory building, you know, like patriarchy. If it's just a female kind of interest group, it's a female interest group, it's not an ideology. Same with the men's group, that's not an ideology. Any kind of person that comes along and tries to kind of build bullshit theory, like, you know, patriarchy or the hypergamy, or, you know, gynocentric or whatever it's called, you know, that just follow your instincts. You know, women can spend time with women and enjoy it, and men can spend time with men and enjoy it. You don't need a theory of oppression to describe those preferences. It's just life.
Well, the other thing I was going to say before I got interrupted by this one, sorry, was that before I became a mother, and the fact that I am so outwardly anti-feminist and more right-wing than most of the people I used to hang out with, I was very, very anxious about the kind of friendships I was going to make with other mothers. And now I've found that I can go to, you know, toddler groups and things, and I talk to other women, and we talk about our children and our husbands maybe, right? But mainly, most of the time, we talk about our children. We look out for each other and our children, our each other's children, especially if we have lots of children. And you find the time to actually think and to do and to kind of be worried about anything else kind of gets smaller and smaller and smaller the more children that you have. So this idea that women are collectivists by nature, it's just common sense to me. Of course they're going to be, because they're there looking after each other's children, and they're there dealing with tantrums and kids not going to bed and being sick and whatever, right? So there isn't much space, especially if you have more than one child, for much else in your daily life when you're a mother, which is why the whole careerist thing is going to come to an end very soon. I can't see it going at the numbers that it is now, like for you know, endlessly, because I do think that we're reaching a point where lots of women are just going, why am I doing this again? I'd rather be at home with my kids.
Yeah, you can have a career. You don't have to do it at the same time that men do it. It's like men can do it when they're young, and they're caring for their families and their young kids and their wives. And when your kids are grown, right, women can, you've got 50 fucking years. You know, we live at the pinnacle of civilization, you know, of medical advancement, and all. We're living longer than ever. It's not just because menopause is literally should be known now as what do they say about life begins at 40?
Middle age.
People pause.
For women, and yeah, all right, the past and the working kind of thing. You know, we're only about 200 years into the kind of, you know, industrial revolution. Give us a fucking chance, you know. We're actually just making it up as we go along, rather than saying this has been built to oppress women. No, we just haven't caught up with actually how it works, and you know what.
And also, I think the gig economy and also the internet, being able to do stuff from home or online, does mean that people can be more creative and work for themselves, and all of that sort of thing. The generations that come up.
Well, too much. Well, no, it wasn't, because I didn't do anything other than sit on a couch and get sucked dry for about 8 months. But about when he was about 1, I went on the internet, and I've never been off since. And I've been roasted, and I learned the hard way, you know, how to debate on the internet, because I started off as a card carrying feminist, and you know, full of shit. And these intervening years, these 13 years, have been so massively creative and intellectually enriching. You know, for feminists to just think that's just because I'm not getting paid for that. Do you know what? I think in the next 20 years, I'm going to be remunerated for that in spades. You know, just because I'm not doing it at the same time my partner was doing it, doesn't mean that, you know, that life is evolving, life is changing all around us. Patriarchy theory has been stuck in the 50s and the 60s and hasn't evolved at all. And Catherine, I just made this for you. That's my patriarchy theory hat.
Oh, thank you.
Tinfoil conspiracy theory hat.
Randomercam. I'm
Sorry.
aware that.
Sorry,
Go
I've
on,
got to go.
jump in.
I have to go because even though James puts me into bed quite often, she keeps asking for me, and didn't have a nap today, so I need to go. But before I go, good fella, I just want to know your opinion about the Femme Fight Club, because I actually think that it's really good that they decided to start that fight club. It's like they've actually decided, you know what, we need to control our angst, and I actually think it's quite a response.
That's
Catherine,
what I thought I was going to say. Good on them, because then they're not punching Antifa and they're not going around punching Trump supporters in the face. It's great.
Right. Yeah, I think it's awesome, and I love your hat, by the way. Right.
I thought it was really funny when that woman said that she was angry at all the men who catcalled her, and it was pretty obvious that not one man has ever catcalled that woman.
Yeah, what are you really angry about? That no men catcall you is what it is.
I think that's what she's really angry about. But it's ironic as well that these same feminists, they complain about, you know, that we were talking about earlier, women in politics get abused, and yet they end it by calling for the death of Theresa May. And it's like, well, what is it? I mean, are women being abused, or is it okay to abuse them? Which one is it? I mean, they just can't make up their minds. But
at least they're taking it out on each other rather than taking it out on men, which I like.
I get the feeling they like it.
If anybody gets hurt, they'll probably blame men anyway, you know, somehow.
You know, I think if Ronda Rousey got in there, she'd teach them a few things.
Yeah, Randomercam, can we have a bit of a chat? Because I've called this stream the demise of the female bears, and I'm aware that there's going to be people watching who've got no idea what I'm talking about.
That was a great comparison that you made, Doctor.
It was. I absolutely loved
brilliant
that.
comparison, because it makes perfect sense. Because no, there's no way anybody ever thinks Bez was being used, and like everybody loves Bez, even one Big Brother. You know, because everybody loves Bez.
That's why everyone knows him. I knew there was a bigger reason people have heard of him. Yeah.
But I mean, to be fair, I've shown it to a lot of like, American and Canadian friends, and they're like, what is this?
What
is a Bez? Let's talk about that.
Is there an American equivalent to Bez?
Well, yeah, halfway through I was doing that video, someone mentioned basketball games and cheerleaders, and then I found something with a mascot in it, and then I thought, oh shit, yeah, I could have just done away with the whole Bez comparison and said, what about mascots? Because mascots are basically the same as Bez. They're Bez, but in a big fucking rubber costume. But
that made me exceedingly happy seeing a bit of Bez, though, to be fair. So I'm glad you didn't.
But loads of bands have an equivalent of Bez. They have just a dude or sometimes a woman who stands around just dancing and getting people in the mood and shit. Although one of the best comments I've had quite recently, someone pointed out, well, you can't really say Bez's function was sexual, whereas.
Well, can I just jump in and say Flavor Flav, he's Bez, isn't he?
Yeah, basically,
pretty much. He's Bez.
Quite a lot of hip hop personality. Frankly, Snoop Dogg is Bez as far as I'm concerned because he can't rap for shit.
But would Milli Vanilli come in that categorization? Those poor guys used just completely objectified.
Almost everyone in the 80s was a Bez. Well, the manufactured pop scene business. New Kids on the Block were just 5 different Bezes.
And the Spice Girls.
Yeah, but as someone pointed out, Bez's role wasn't sexual, which is an argument that gave me pause because is there something about Grid Girls and Walk On Girls that is sexual? I mean, they're not performing any sex acts, are they?
But hang on. I mean, you've got to remember that we're dealing with audiences who are all on pills. And, like, audiences who are all on pills are attracted to, like, anyone and anything, so...
Were they all on E? Everyone
that was very much their thing, yes. That was the Happy Mondays bag,
I don't see how it's sexual, though. I don't see how the Grid Girls or the Walk-On Girls and the Darts, I don't see how it's sexual. Just because men are attracted to them, it doesn't mean the whole thing is sexual. They're not. It's not like they're twerking. They're not doing anything like that.
The Darts girls in particular are wearing such respectable outfits.
In evolutionary terms, it's a celebration of peak fertility in young, fertile, women. They're not like Vogue models. They're not skinny. They don't have genetic diseases.
They're far better role models. Feminists keep saying, what about the little girls at home? And I'm like, well, they've got these role models on TV of women who are happy and healthy and working jobs that they enjoy. Like, what's a role model?
All those little girls who watch Formula One and darts. I mean, how many are there? 3? For God's sake. There's no young girls are watching darts.
They might tune in randomly while they're flicking around between loose women and This Morning. They might see the darts and then see a hot woman in the darts and then be suddenly offended, despite having just changed the channel from Loose Women when nothing offensive was going on at all.
That one that you were talking to, Elizabeth, on that video where she said, my daughter was there, and I said to her, "What are the men doing?" "Oh, the men are playing darts." What are the women doing? And I was thinking, well, I could say to my son, right, let's watch daytime TV. What are the women doing? Well, they're presenting and they're talking. What are the men doing? Well, nothing, because they're not there. I mean, there's just different places.
Well, yeah, and it's like adverts. What are the women doing? Being very capable and getting things sorted, and what are the men doing? Being fucking clowns. And it's like, what are the men doing in blockbuster movies? Well, mostly getting fucking murdered. And what are the women doing? Well, they're slapping their love interest across the face, and apparently that's all right.
No, yeah. I read, interestingly enough, I mean, it's a bit of a segue, sorry, just Quentin Tarantino's kind of response to Uma Thurman. Has anybody read that?
I've seen that. I actually commented on that today because I listened to the video or the audio rather, and he was defending Roman Polanski raping that 13-year-old girl, right? And he was saying that, you know, she was a party girl, she was up for it and all that kind of stuff, right? And now there's a big uproar, and quite rightly so. But I pointed out that this is what boys who are raped by their female teachers get told all the time.
Mm-hmm.
All the time they get told that they were up for it, they wanted it, you know. So he's making the same argument that these young boys who are also victims hear all the time, you know. So
yeah,
I don't agree with it though.
I'm not talking about the Polanski things specifically. I'm talking about the Irma Thuman talked about Harvey Weinstein and certain things.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought,
it was awful because she somehow put Tarantino having convinced her to do a stunt that was dangerous in the same category as Harvey Weinstein, and it's just a complete.
I don't know, but the thing is, I think Tarantino and Thurman were in contact with each other when she was writing that. I don't know what's gone on, but I think it's really interesting. Just looking at and both of them. But about the Polanski thing, one of my friends, Jamie Palmer's, who's an editor of Quillette, has just written something where he interviewed the woman who was raped by Roman Polanski, and that is fucking explosive. I've been trying to promote it on Twitter. Nobody's picking it up. Even Quillette aren't really promoting it very much.
What did she say?
You have to read it, Catherine. It deserves a fucking Pulitzer Prize. But this interview, it blows everything out of the fucking water about the hypocrisy of Me Too, and about how rape victims are used by feminists just to perpetuate a narrative. Everybody needs to go and read the interview that Jamie Palmer did with the victim of with the rape victim of Roman Polanski in Quillette magazine right now, because that is, you know, that deserves a Pulitzer Prize. At the current moment, that's the best bit of journalism that's ever come out recently to date. Honest to God, it's unbelievable, and it makes me really proud to be Jamie's friend. But I'm gonna have to buy him a pint when I'm in London. But yeah, they're just. Sorry, no, carry on, because I'm talking.
Yeah, I've often thought, and I've often heard from women who have been victims that actually they don't care about victims. They actually don't. Again, I think because their ideology is paramount, actually they don't care about any of these issues. It's not even about women. It's not about the rape victims. It's about the politics of it, and they would rather hold this light up to these cases where it goes wrong, or cases where women aren't believed, than actually explain to women this that you will be believed. There are people out there that are there to support you and help you. And actually, I've realized that the this narrative of you will not be believed, that is a feminist narrative.
Because what are feminists? What defines a feminist really? It's a belief in patriarchy and a belief that they must dismantle patriarchy. What is one of the pillars of supposed patriarchy? It's the justice system. They have to target the justice system, even though in actuality it's doing perfectly well representing and rape victims and prosecuting rapists. But they can't say that because, and this is where their narrative falls down when they try to kind of flip-flop between, no, we're just about equality and we're pro-women, to, no. If they actually cared about women, they would be encouraging women or all victims of rape to go to the justice, to go to the police, because the system works. It absolutely works. There's no doubt about that. And the fact that they
works a little bit too well sometimes.
Sorry.
It works a little bit too well when it comes to prosecuting men for rape, whether or not they did it.
More rapists convicted than burglars. You know, is there a patriarchal, system kind of protecting burglars? I don't think there is.
Good point.
I just, because of all this Me Too stuff, I'm a resting actor. Some would say permanently resting, but I actually was somebody in. I don't want to give details, but someone touched my bum, and he was in a position of authority, and
Sorry.
It's
Oh no,
okay.
it wasn't that time.
And I wasn't traumatized. I was not traumatized at all, but I wanted there to be some kind of accountability because this person was in a position of authority and I'd seen him treat other women and actually other men like that. And it wasn't even necessarily sexual. It was more about I'm in control. I can just touch you however I want. And I tried to go through the complaints procedure and it was just completely set up that it was this individual. It was his playpen. There was no way there was going to be any accountability. And I realized, I actually got some legal advice and I realized the only thing I could do would be to go to the police. And I phoned up this thing, it was called the Sapphire Team. And I just wanted to understand what it would be like if I made this complaint. And they said, look, you'll come in and there are these people to support you and they'll get you to give out all your statement and they'll make sure that you don't feel ashamed and, you won't be asked what you were wearing, all this kind of stuff. And it seemed like there was this huge team there to support me if I did want to make this complaint. And the reason that I actually didn't do this, I felt so bad that I would be wasting all of these facilities. This was about 10 years ago, so I hadn't started looking into this feminism thing that I have done now. And I just thought to myself, I mustn't waste these resources because these resources are there for women who have been raped really seriously and it's really hard to get convictions for rape and there's no justice and they never catch anyone and all this kind of thing. And if I knew then what I know now, I would definitely have reported it, I think. And my main reason was not wanting him to then go on and treat other people really badly. So thanks, feminists. That's what I have to say there.
Well, I should just personally say I'm actually in the middle of a process right now. It's not to do with me. It's to do with a family member. It's a historical childhood thing that I'm witness to. And I can't fault the process at all. Okay. And nobody's asked me either to just say something, because it's all about his word against her word, and I've gone down the line and said that I can't remember some things and I saw other things and didn't. And at every step of the process, the police have been absolutely fucking fantastic. And I'm not the one who's traumatized, but it's a little bit weird going through it because I have to remember things from when I was very young. Well, not that young, but just from when I think of myself as being a different person. But I wasn't the victim. And I really hate it when the British criminal justice system is absolutely trashed by feminists, because that is not my experience. We should be telling victims, male and female, that they should come forward because they will be taken seriously. And in almost 58% of rapists will be convicted. Well, they're not going to be, that's a better conviction rate than for burglary and for other crimes, and the attrition rate is even commensurate with that. The attrition rate for burglary is higher than it is for rape. The kind of the story, the narrative that's spun around it is purely towards a feminist benefit. It's not towards the benefit of women at all. It harms women, and that's been proven. If you look at the Stern report on rape, which was a few years ago, that was a government report, one of the rare ones that actually was objective. They came to the same conclusion.
I mean, a lot of young women, they might go through something like that, and then they might think, well, there's no point in reporting it to the police because they never catch rapists. They don't take it seriously. So, and then there's a rapist on the loose because they didn't, but all because feminists have scared them away from the police, the very people there to help them. And
absolutely.
It's just and the police take it very seriously.
The police will take it seriously if you tell them someone sent a tweet that you were offended by.
Exactly.
Depending on who you are.
And who the joke was made about.
But I guess, with all the police cuts, it's easier to kind of do desktop policing than it is on the beat policing or investigative policing or you know, the kind of the whole scandal with disclosure at the minute, which is just and obviously that's been taken advantage of by feminists.
But
Certainly,
that's part of the police. That's part of the police fault, but it's also part of the lawyer's fault. Because if you've got a good lawyer, they should be saying, no, I want all the evidence. Don't hold anything back from me. Give me everything, rather than just listening to the police and going, oh, what, you mean those text messages aren't important? All right, okay then. No, give me those text messages. I'll decide whether it's important. That's what the lawyer should be saying. So it's not just the police. The police, the fault of the police. It's also the fault of the lawyers for being incompetent.
Yeah. Before they actually hand it over to the
all these people that have got problems, though, you know, the politicians and the lawyers and feminists, they've all been to fucking university. Like, it's just, it's become, you know, a centre of indoctrination and not education. And it's like my faith at the present moment is kind of resting on everyone who fucking hasn't been to university. Like Brexit was won by everyone who hasn't been to fucking university.
I've been to university and I'm still cool.
I'm going to university. I'm doing it now.
How old were you when you went, Mike?
The usual 18 till 22. I intercalated for a year because it was getting a bit harsh. Yeah, that's where you take a year out. Where you say, okay, I need a year away from university to clear my head. So
I have a baby.
It took 4 years for me to get through a 3-year course.
It did me too.
So,
but no, I was just thinking because if I'd have gone to university, which I was working class, I was just told to go and work in the crisp factory and fuck it, but in Peterlee. But I think it was worth it when I went to university. I didn't get to university until I was 34, and by that time I'd had a vast amount of life experience, kind of traveling around the world as an actor, a vast amount.
Have we lost Paula? What's going on here?
Okay, it's not me.
Oh, I'm sure she'll be back soon. Yeah, I'm 29. I've just gone to university, and I mean, I'm glad that I didn't go because I mean, I think at 18, like you, I would have been impressionable, and I worry what would have become of my mind, to be honest.
Yeah, you know, when you're told when you're 18, when you know you've. I mean, I lost my virginity when I was like 19. I would have been, and I would have been told by feminists that men were predators, that you need to be careful, you need to be, you know. That's why feminists, that's why all ideologues want access to young minds, because they can shape them, because, you know, your brains aren't kind of finished growing until you're about 25.
A good question, sorry, Paula, a good question has just come through on the chat, which is that somebody called Punkster says, what can I do to help my niece who's going to university in September to help her avoid all of this nonsense? So I guess... subscribe to
the Liberty Bells.
No, I was seriously going to say it's all about YouTube, not necessarily us, you know, whoever kind of appeals to her, whether that's Petition or Sargon or Goodfella or Randomercam or Karen Strawn, you know, the Red Pill is a really good channel, but I think it's all about alternative media, basically.
Until we can get them to actually change their syllabus, which will probably take several decades, you can know the difference between what you're supposed to say and what you actually think, because they're already getting sort of white privilege tests in Canadian schools and shit like that. And you can guess from the questions what you're supposed to say. Oh yeah, white people are privileged because of this and that and this and that. And you can go away kind of knowing that you were lying out of your teeth just to get the good result. But it's the best thing to do in your own interests while everything's this fucked up. I'm glad I finished university in 2004 before all this shit got quite as bad as it is.
That's just when I started.
There you go.
And I think in the UK, in a way, we're lucky because in the US, they have these degrees where you take a little class here and a class there and you build your own curriculum, and they kind of make it compulsory. Even if you're doing more sciences, they make these activists kind of make it compulsory that you take a class in gender or equality or whatever, so they can brainwash you. But I think in the UK, so it depends what your niece is doing at university. You know, if she's doing a subject where she can maybe be a bit more protected from it, you know, in the Freshers Week in the UK, they try to have these sessions where they can bring this ideology in. But she may be doing a subject where she's a bit more protected from this, and she can just kind of, you know, study, and if she wants to engage with that out of, you know, in her social time, that's up to her. I consider myself very lucky because I did do an arts subject. I did very early medieval history and literature, but for some reason my department was just so like, you learnt your grammar, you learnt your history. It was from so many hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, that not even the Marxists could be bothered with the history I was studying. And I'm very grateful for that. And what I didn't realize at the time was that just across the corridor in the English department, my generation was being totally brainwashed. And it's my generation. I was at university with some people who are now very, very influential social justice activists. I had no idea what was going on, and I consider myself very, very lucky to have escaped all that. But I think it does depend in the UK very much on what department you're studying in. And if some departments, I think she'll have to, as Dr. Randomercam suggested, just basically lie.
Can I declare?
Yeah, it's not worth your job, so to speak, to try making a stand on your own behalf.
Peterson,
Just get the exams right, and then
recently.
start a club in your spare time.
Yeah, Peterson said it recently. It was in that one of his London shows. I think it was his second London show. I watched it live streamed on Facebook, and thanks, Paula. That was your link, wasn't it? And at some point, a young woman got up and she said, "Look, I keep talking to all of my you sent it to me. I keep talking to all my friends about these issues and like sorting their life out and about the truth, and you know, then just not taking any of it on board." And he said, "Don't throw pearls before swine."
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, so but saying that, you know, I find myself at the Open University, and I haven't been on since term started, but just before term started I got addicted to the debate forum. And that is, I mean,
and that's what I said to you.
Incredibly.
Don't get into arguments that are not going to do you any good. Yeah, that's why I sent it.
Yeah,
to you.
it was totally, you know, progressive, left wing, kind of social justice central. So I don't know. I mean, I find it hard to kind of try to estimate what proportion of university students think in this way. I know there is pushback. One of my friends works at a university in Liverpool, and his team had to go in and receive like some training on like sexual harassment, and he tried to tape it for me, but the tape didn't come out very clear. But apparently there was a lot of pushback from people not taking all of this shit, which is a really encouraging sign. And I don't know whether it's to do with them kind of being northerners as well. I think southerners are a bit more inclined to all of this nonsense. You know, we voted Remain.
I wonder if
can I just add before, just on that thing, I don't think you should she's your niece, you're going to know her for the rest of your life. I think never underestimate the power of just planting a seed and letting it grow for a year or 2 or 3, you know, or just throwing seeds every now and again in, just to kind of interrupt whatever narrative that's going on there, but not pushing it, just kind of, just with love, just with respect, just kind of, oh, this is really interesting. It's kind of, oh yeah, I understand. And if she's kind of listening, if she's full of the kind of, because, you know, there's a lot of sexual kind of selection going on there, you know, it's how are you going to get a partner if you're a conservative? Oh my God, you're never going to get laid. You know, men have to, you know, there are swings and roundabouts. But just throwing, she's not going to be at university for the rest of her life. It's a playground, and it's almost, so just throw in that seed and see where it grows.
And also, sorry.
No, I was going to say, tell her to question everything, and then question it again, and don't lie to yourself. Don't lie to yourself just because everybody else is saying something. Just because everyone else is saying 2 + 2 is 5, it's 4. Don't lie to yourself and say it's 5, because it's not. So don't lie to yourself and just question everything. That's what I would say.
Patriarchy.
And I hope that attitude doesn't get you in trouble. I agree with what Goodfella's saying for the most part, but at the same time, I don't want to get anyone in trouble, because we've all seen what happened with Lindsay Shepherd, and that was a teaching assistant. Think about the things that are happening to students in universities all over the world who don't have the foresight to record it.
We are talking about an adult here, a young adult, but still an adult, and if she sees fit to make some noise, then more power to her, and thank God for her, because we need students to do this.
I don't, she's still very young. She's still working out who she is.
Also, I like what Ben Shapiro says as well, because Shapiro talks about how, yes, if you need to lie in your essay to get the marks, don't throw your degree down the toilet. But he also says he studied at the 2 most left-wing universities you can possibly study at, and I think it was UCLA, and then he went to Harvard Law, which is again very sort of, we've all seen Legally Blonde, and he said it gave him an opportunity to learn their arguments better than they know them themselves, and actually it's an advantage to you if you can know their arguments and not be afraid of them, because we all like to stay in our hug boxes, and we all enjoy watching Jordan Peterson's video. We find that more comfortable than watching, some feminists do a video, because it does challenge us and it puts us in. It is uncomfortable when you have to listen to someone that disagrees with you, but it's healthy for you. So again, and again, she might listen to all these arguments and decide that she wants to be a feminist, and that's a decision that is hers to make. But again, like planting that,
be feminists until they want to have kids, and then But I mean, when I started university when I was 34, I got pregnant in my 2nd year. But I mean, I was also just discovering evolutionary theory. So at the same time that I was being taught Marxist, postmodernism, Foucault, Sausage, whatever his name was, and in all these Benjamin blah de blah, the angel of the history going backwards and that kind of thing. At the same time, I was going home I was reading all the texts I should have been doing in the library at university, but then going home and reading The Selfish Gene and things like that. So I eventually, after 4 years, because I had a baby in the middle of it, which changed a lot of things as well, I ended up doing my dissertation on trying to in a kind of E.O. Wilson-ish type of consilience of trying the natural and of feminism and evolutionary theory, which someone called Greet Vandermassen was doing at the same time, and which now is quite common, something called evolutionary feminism, and I think which is going to kill evolutionary psychology, because evolutionary psychology has fought so long and hard to be accepted, just not as a pseudoscience, and it is in the sciences, but in the social sciences. But now the social sciences and feminism has, I think, invaded it. And I mean, I stopped. I think the last thing I wrote on that was about 2014 or something, and I didn't even believe it at the time. I was just doing it because I wanted to get published, and I got offered to be able to co-write a paper, and so I did it. And I was still kind of on the fence about it, and then we published 2 papers, and then I just thought, no, I'm not a feminist at all.
I thought feminists didn't like Evo Psych. Once Evo Psych started discovering things that feminists don't like, I thought they started saying, this doesn't count as a science. Let's carry on with the other social sciences, the ones that we can, the ones that we can fudge the answers from. Yeah.
There's a dilemma within evolutionary theory, because which all progressives are going to butt up against, which is evolution is unequal, variation. I can't. I'm a bit too tired to talk about it now, but I've written about it before. But and they kind of fall foul of the naturalistic fallacy and is-ought and all these kinds of things. But for kind of Marxists and utopian kind of Marxists and progressives and stuff like that, the theory of evolution, the fact of evolution, is fundamentally is contrary to their kind of hopes. So that's why they'll always end up putting up against it. But yeah, I think I'm getting tired now. I'm gonna have to log off. Nearly.
Yeah, no, the
time and a half now.
yeah, the fact of evolution.
Yeah, I'll do it a bit early, and I'll be able.
Can you all hear me?
I can hear you.
All right. Yeah, no, one of the first things the fact of evolution tells us is that we've been separated into male and female for hundreds of millions of years. There are good reasons for that. I mean, never mind all the evo psych business. The first thing it tells us, biologically speaking, is something that doesn't sit well with the let's call them social justice warriors.
All biology is evolutionary biology. I think what I was mentioning before was something called differential fitness, which means some people will survive to adulthood and some people won't, and some people will reproduce and some people won't. And
weirdly enough, one of those weird facts we know from the history of sort of mitochondrial DNA and stuff is that half as many men reproduce as women. We don't know quite what the percentage is, but if it's 80% of women throughout history have bred, then only 40% of men have.
That's
and
right.
it goes back to what we were talking about earlier on, that feminism is trying to get women to not sort of reproduce, like trying to bring them down to where men are. maybe we can make only 40% of women reproduce, but can you do that? I mean that's if it's against our evolutional biological nature, can you even do that? And if you can,
I don't know. Can Jeremy Corbyn get in and give everyone free university?
I missed that. Sorry. Can you do what? Sorry.
You missed the comment about Jeremy Corbyn.
No. You said, can you do that? Can you do that as an evolutionary thing? Can you do that?
Oh, can you get women's level of reproduction down to 40%, the same as men?
Yeah.
The original comment.
Absolutely. The replacement rate is ridiculously low. I think.
Yeah. Okay. There
was the researcher I mentioned before called Roy Baumeister was the person I think who kind of let loose that kind of statistic about male variance and genetic variance within the kind of. But what I've tried to kind of say recently as well, because I think that's been taken on board ideologically by a lot of kind of red. I don't know how do you differentiate between them? MGTOWs or where they say yes, men historically, evolution is always a historical story. It's not telling you what is happening right now. Everybody alive now, right, is the descendant. Every man alive now is the descendant of a successful man. So they should never think of themselves as losers. Nobody knows, what ecosystem or environment we're going to be dropped into that is going to, because it's the environment and the ecosystem that's going to determine how well we're adapted to that and how successful we are. You should never give up just because you're a man. You should never just think because I'm a man, I'm at a disadvantage. And because every single man that's alive now and every single woman that's alive now is a descendant of a successful individual.
A descendant of thousands of successful sexual copulations in a row, including a great deal of monkey rape.
Oh, don't get me on monkey rape. Come on. I'm tired. I'm going to go now.
I think you're kind of okay.
Or do you want to say something?
Well, I was just going to say, I think you're referring to a specific demographic within MGTOW, and I I have
pig.
some warm feelings towards MGTOW. Yeah, Natty's got a word for this particular demographic, which is pigtow. I call them MGTOW sectarians. You know,
Paul
think-
Elam tried calling them pigtail a few years ago. It didn't go down very well. That was during that sort of drama between him and John the Other and MGTOW.
Oh.
He started calling improper MGTOW pigtail.
Well, this is why I think I don't call myself anything. I'm just an individual. Because
I'll call myself whatever gets me into the game. They say men don't play games like women do, but I will. I'll play every game you got and I'll win.
But no, I'm just Paula, and I'm just trying to work it out the same way everybody else is. And I think I don't know what I think. I'm really tired. I need to go. Bye-bye, lovelies. Bye-bye, ladies.
Thank you for the interesting thoughts.
Yes, well, carry on. I'll watch the end of this tomorrow. Bye-bye.
So are we going to move on to, I know Paula tweeted out earlier that we were going to talk about the centenary of the Representation of the People Act. Are we going to approach that subject? Have we said all we need to say so
about
far?
those terrorists?
I suppose there's one more thing I'd like to say about grid girls, although we've kind of deviated from that subject quite wildly, which is just that, you know, and it's related to the kind of 50-50 representation of women in parliament thing and this feminist, you know, buzz phrase that we need better representation of women. And, you know, I just want to say that can't mean less women. Which you pointed out in your video again, didn't you, Randomercam? You know, you took the woman out of the shot and saw what was left, and it was no women. So that's my last word on that.
So I think the next step they're trying to go is, well, get the men's darts replaced with the women's darts, and get the men's Formula One replaced with the women's Formula One. Well, there's a reason they're separate in the first place, because they're different levels of competition. And just like people are willing to pay more for female models because of the extra glamour, they're willing to pay more for male sportsmen because of the extra.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
it's important to remember in Formula One, there isn't a separate women's category. Women can compete along with the men, and actually,
oh really?
Yeah. And there is a British female Formula One driver. I'm married to a petrol head.
Rebecca Jackson.
Susie Wolf is the one that I know about, and I'm not an expert, but the articles that I have read about Susie Wolf, she don't take no feminist garbage. She really, when the feminists, you know, interviewers, you know, it's ubiquitous that they have to ask that question of, are you a feminist? Do you get discriminated against? Susie Wolf won't have any of that crap. And there are a lot of ways in which getting into that kind of Formula One is quite exclusive, because you have to start karting when you're quite young and it's quite expensive, so that in that way it can be a bit exclusive, and of course it's just, you know, the number of girls that are going to be interested in it to that degree is going to be probably very, very low compared to the number of boys. But no, women can compete in Formula One.
Well, about the BBC are going to try to replace male darts with female darts. A few years ago, they started to put women's football on at the time where the men's football would usually be on, and they put the live match on BBC One, and then in the next live match they had to relegate it to BBC Two because nobody watched it, and then they just done away with it. Even though they made this big deal about, oh, we're going to put women's football on, nobody bloody watched it, because it's just, you know, men are physically superior, so obviously they're going to watch the men's game. Women's football, nobody takes it seriously, you know. So the female darts, I don't know why male darts players and female darts players can't compete with each other. It's not that physical.
Again, maybe they can't. Maybe they can. Maybe it's like Formula One, like everyone can compete, but it just so happens that men are all the best. Mm-hmm. The same goes with chess, by the way. I'm quite into chess, I don't know if you know, and as you can imagine, like something like 2% of grandmasters are female. Like the top female player in the world is something like 50th. in the world, or something like that. And there's no biological reason for this at all. Well, there's no, muscular reason for this at all. There's nothing about men being bigger or stronger that would make them better at chess, but they are. And yet they have separate competitions for women.
It's bizarre. They should be allowed to compete. Same with snooker. That's another one. Male and female should be able to compete with each other for the same trophy.
But I've heard that when women compete against men, they actually pull back and aren't as competitive because they want to appear sexually attractive, and competing isn't necessarily the best way to do that.
But then that would be their problem, though, wouldn't it? That they would have to deal with that problem themselves.
Yeah, or you could just have segregated sports,
like in the Olympics. Yeah, if the Olympics was a free for all, like men and women could compete together, there would be no women at all, except in the sports that are completely unphysical, like chess. But even then, I know chess isn't in the Olympics, but you know what I mean. Even sports and games that aren't in any way physical are still dominated by men, because it's not just about being bigger and stronger. It's about being competitive. It's about being risk taking.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's more than that, because there's, like, if you look at music as well, the vast majority of musical geniuses are men. And if you look at the few kind of female musical geniuses like Joni Mitchell, it's really common to hear them say, well, I kind of get on with men more than women, and I don't really see the world from a feminine perspective.
Well, it's the bell curve, isn't it? And more Nobels, more dumbbells. And of course, you don't hear feminists arguing about it's not fair that it's mostly men at the bottom end as well. It just shows that.
It's the same with the job market. They never talk about the men at the bottom. They only talk about the CEOs and the men at the top. They never talk about the men, doing the worst jobs in society. It's just the same
We
thing.
don't need equality there.
No, it's funny that, isn't it?
It's just more equality for women if we're not doing those jobs.
Yeah, I sort of tried to make this point in my video about how people will pay the difference for the extra glamour they get from women, and what I was insinuating there, though not saying, was that this is what explains the wage gap. People are simply willing to pay more for men because they've got a good track record for working hard.
I don't know. I mean, that's assuming some kind of unconscious bias, and I really am not convinced that there's much at all unconscious bias going on. I know at my university at the OU, the first magazine, we get these quarterly magazines, and the first one I got had this article in about how BME students, that's Black and minority ethnic students, are not getting such good marks. And so they're going to give all of their staff training. And I'm kind of sitting there reading it going like, am I going to be fucking penalised in marking for being white or what?
Maybe.
Like, it does seem to set up that kind of pressure. I tend to think people are pretty fair-minded generally. And I think,
They are, but the one point at which the wage gap gets beyond all the fluff and the lies, and into the meat of it, is often a company when faced with two different candidates, a male and a female, and they're equally qualified, they're more likely to go with the male, simply because, like I said, they have a track record for not getting pregnant and taking time off work and eventually never going back to work, especially female doctors. Because if a female doctor gets pregnant, she's there's a good chance she'll never come back to work, and all that training that went on her,
Yeah, of course it would, because obviously she's going to marry someone from that same kind of social bracket who are going to be more than capable of earning enough money to take care of both of them.
The whole Me Too campaign has made women a liability to employ.
Oh yeah,
it really has. And it's already There's already a lot of baggage because, like you say, if they get pregnant in Britain, the law is if she gets pregnant, you need to keep her job open for a year. You need to replace her with someone. So that's 2 people you're paying, you know, and plus you then need to get rid of the other person and keep her job open. If she decides to come back, you have to leave it open for her. And she might then decide, nah, I'm not coming back. You know, and it's just, a man's not going to give you that hassle. You know, so they're just a liability.
I've got a question here from Bite Dog Bite Hard. How many of us would allow a new female consultant to operate on you? Was she bribed to go on the course?
Was she a
I mean,
diversity
either that
hire?
or she might be Lavinia fucking Woodward, mightn't she?
Although I just want to say on this topic, when I was at university, the medics that were in my year, most of them were ethnic minority females. And I have to say, I would trust any of them to operate on me. And I think there was only one medic guy in my year. I would not want him to be my surgeon. So I think that the standards for doing a medical degree in this country are really, really high.
So what you're saying, this is from Bill Foster, what you're saying is that lobsters should just give up and play with my Cindy dolls while female CEOs clean your room. That wasn't to us, but I just found
There's a lot of
amusing.
memes in there. For those who don't know the memes, there's a lot of memes in there.
Loads of memes.
I found a lobster keyring in Paper Chase the other day, and I'm now proudly wearing it on my bag where the other mums wear pom-poms, and I'm like waiting for someone to get the reference. I was like in a really, really quiet shop, and I saw it and just laughed out loud, and then thought, shit, everyone thinks I'm fucking insane. But never mind. But
And
yeah,
shall
I
we
was trying to drag it back onto the votes, wasn't I?
Yeah, suffrage.
Have you seen
Those
that?
terrorists.
Have you seen that new Channel 4 advert? It's about the vote, the 100-year anniversary of the vote,
I haven't
and it's
seen
going through
it.
all this stuff. I just seen it this morning. It's going through all this stuff that you know, they told women they can't do this and they can't do that and they can't do this and they can't do that, and you know, like they can't climb Everest and they can't climb the CEO ladder, and you know, it's going through all this rubbish that is pure feminist garbage, and it goes on for like a full minute as well, and it's just, I don't know. I'm gonna look for it because I might do a video on it. It's just so annoying. All these feminist talking points about women being told what they can't do, and nobody's telling women this. Only feminists are saying women are being told this. They're not actually being told this. Nobody's saying to women, you can't be a CEO. There's loads of female CEOs. Nobody's ever said to a woman,
Hi,
you
Susan.
you can't climb Mount Everest. You know, it just doesn't happen. So it's just, keep your eye out. If you watch Channel 4, keep your eye out for it. You'll see it. It's on all the time.
I'll have to look that up on YouTube. I try not to watch too much Channel 4, to be honest,
Yeah.
if I can help
Yeah,
it.
it's all gone downhill since Pob, if you ask me.
I like it in the morning because in the morning it's got the sitcoms on, you know. So I just leave it in the background. That's why I've seen these adverts.
Was Pob the first ever thing on Channel 4? I think
I've
that's
got
what
an
I was going
impression
with.
of Pob, actually. Hang on.
You have to make noise so we can't see you. There you go.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, here we go.
Yeah, I've always been quite proud of that. Doesn't take much effort
Yeah.
either, but it's effective, I think.
That's another thing that freaks out Americans. They're like, what the fuck is a Pob? It's a long story.
Is a Pob like a Bez? To what degree is a Pob like a
Pob
Bez?
is a bit like a Bez, isn't it? Yeah.
Mm.
Although
A
Pob was
is
more of
like
a front
Bez,
man.
but more objectified.
Pob was a bit more like the Thorn Rider of that setup.
Listen, I'm going to have to love you and leave you, right? Because got stuff to do. So
It's been
thank
amazing
you.
talking with you for the first time. I've been watching your videos for years, and I'm so pleased to actually get to.
Oh, really?
So, hi.
It has.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure.
Could you say in your accent, I am obviously a Nigerian woman?
I am
Because that's
obviously a Nigerian woman. I am obviously a Nigerian woman. Yes, I actually, I don't know
Is
if you
that
follow me on
legal
Twitter,
in
but I'm kind of.
Scotland?
It's what?
Is that legal in Scotland to make such
What, to be in
jokes? Aren't you gonna like end up
Oh no,
dankulared?
well,
You already got
You've been
dankulared.
dankulared, actually, haven't you?
You've already got sent to jail. Dankula hasn't even.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose has he spent a night in a
No,
cell?
he must have spent the night in a cell, or maybe I don't know. Actually, it depends. It depends when he got arrested. If he got arrested like during the week, he might have just got questioned there and then. But if it's the weekend, you're in all weekend. So I don't know. But for a tweet, I got charged with a hate crime and haven't heard anything about it since. So, but it's actually made me worse, if that makes sense. It hasn't made me not tell jokes. It's just made me even worse than, because I refuse to buckle, under that pressure. And I'm not going to change who I am and making jokes just because there's sensitive people out there, But I'm glad to hear you watch my videos, though. It's the accent, I think, that you two have makes me think that you wouldn't watch my videos. I don't know why. Just
I love
that accent you have.
You make me laugh.
Oh, that's
In a
good.
good
That's a bonus.
Posh people all over the world love Billy Connolly, man, and you're the same.
I suppose it's the poshness. I'm thinking, I don't know what it is, but I don't know why I'm playing it. But anyway, thank you very much for having me on. Any other time I'm on, I'll gladly join you. But I have to go now, right? So I'm going to say bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thanks for
In a
listening.
while.
Bye, everybody.
Just before we all go, Paula Wright and I made a video about busting some of the myths about the Representation of the People Act 1918. I'm going to pop a link to it in the chat. And yeah, please share it around, everyone, because we worked hard on that thing.
The Women and the Vote? Women
Yeah.
and the Vote UK?
Yeah.
Okay. Right, I'm going now. But I'll share that video. I'll share that, right? Right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Word.
I have to go too. Bye-bye, everyone. And you too, Dr. Randomercam.
Okay.
I don't know if we met you before either.
Hi and bye. It was lovely talking to you.
Take care.
Air kiss, blow, yay.